It's absolutely outrageous. It shocks the conscience, in fact. I mean, and that's why we're calling these, the Biden trial, because it really is part of a grand partisan legal witch hunt, orchestrated by and on behalf of, the failed president, crooked Joe Biden. People are not stupid. The American people are smart, and they're seeing through this because we're shining light on it, because shows like yours and like mine and Don Jr.'s are actually exposing this corruption, talking about the facts, and showing the American people that this is nothing more and tantamount to gross election interference.
Will we have a vote on impeaching Joe Biden before this Congress is over?
Well, it looks to me like he's committed impeachable offenses, plural. So I would love to see that vote. We've got some Republicans that I just don't agree with ideologically on anything, and they would rather turn a blind eye and get along and just hunker down and go on with the status quo than try to make the tough decisions to hold people accountable. But there's no question in my mind Joe Biden's committed impeachable offenses, and we'll see how this thing all turns out.
All right, folks, it's Friday. Two great conversations coming your way. James Comer led the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives. He's the one that forced Muriel Bowser, the D.C. mayor, to clear out that encampment at GW. Plus, he's leading the Hunter Biden effort. I'm going to get to all that with him. And then a great conversation with Kimberly Guilfoyle. She's a former DA. 2 times over, so a lot to get into with her. Before I get into it with James Comer, though, I do want to tell you about the folks at Paint Your Life. You've heard me before tell you about this great company. This weekend is Mother's Day. You missed out, but Father's Day is coming up. There's a lot of other holidays and birthdays. So if you've got the perfect picture that you want to get made into a painting, and think about it, it can be one picture. Maybe, I always say this, don't use me. But if you have to, maybe giving me is the perfect gift. I don't know. Some families it is. But you can take a bunch of pictures, make a compilation, bring some people together for a painting, bring in a dog, make it a bunch of people. But you can also choose the kind. You can be acrylic, charcoal, watercolors. You get to choose the frame you want. It really is a unique and meaningful gift that no one else will be giving anyone. And they'll always remember you for giving this, right? But then you actually get to choose the artist, and the artist sends you videos while they're making it to make sure that you approve everything, 100% guarantee. And if you text Spicer to 87204, Spicer, that's me, SPICER, to 87204, you're going to get 20% off and free shipping. I mean, hello, what a great deal. Great gift, meaningful gift, and 20% off from the folks at Paint Your Life when you text Spicer to 87204. Trust me, they have to hang it up. They wouldn't be able to have you over if they didn't have it up. So get something meaningful and unique the next time you need a gift from the folks at Paint Your Life. Text Spicer to 87204. Message and data rates may apply. All right, let's bring in House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. Chairman, good to see you. I think this week, in one way, you epitomized why we need a House majority. And this hearing that you had scheduled once again shows that power. It's not always about the legislation. It's sometimes the hearings, the accountability that needs to happen. And D.C.'s mayor knew that she was going to be held accountable for what's going on at these universities. Walk us through the timeline of what happened.
So a week ago, this had been going on in George Washington for about 7 days at that point. And we decided that we were going to take a group from the Oversight Committee to meet with the George Washington University president and faculty, and then tour the encampments. And that's exactly what we did. And I was surprised at the candidness of the university president. She was asking for help. She asked me for help. She knew that the House Oversight Committee had legislative jurisdiction over Washington, D.C., and she was wanting some accountability. She said they've requested multiple times help from Washington, D.C. to clear out the trespassers, and they refused to provide that help. So we decided then and there that we were going to have a hearing. We were going to bring Mayor Bowser and the police chief in and explain to the committee and to America why they weren't doing their job. So then the following Monday, I had a private meeting with Mayor Bowser in my office in Washington. That would have been 2 days prior to the hearing, which was scheduled for Wednesday. And we talked, and the mayor and I obviously had a disagreement over what was going on at George Washington. And she said she didn't want to come to the hearing. And I said, well, I understand you don't want to come, but I'm going to subpoena you if you don't come. So then late Tuesday night, she ordered the police to do their job. They cleaned out the encampment. And then Wednesday morning, I called the mayor and I thanked her. And I said, since you did your job, I'll cancel the hearing. So I don't think anyone in America believes she would have cleared out that encampment were it not for the fact that she was fixing to be hauled in front of the House Oversight Committee and have to face the brunt of not just our committee, but a majority of Americans.
So let's start with the university president for a second. Do you think that exemplifies the concern that a lot of university, because I haven't heard a lot of university presidents ask for help. In fact, a lot of times they're saying, in the case at least early on with Columbia, they didn't want the NYPD there. But in D.C., it seems like the George Washington University president was saying, I actually need help and I'm not getting it. Was that kind of what you were hearing from other institutions?
I haven't heard it from other institutions, but I heard it from George Washington, and she was clear. They needed help. She made this point that 22% of their student body population was Jewish, and they were being intimidated. They didn't feel that it was a safe environment, and she was having to take steps to provide the Jewish students a virtual learning option because they didn't want to have to walk through those encampments to go to class. I mean, that's terrible. You would never think about something like that happening in the United States. And to think that the university president was pleading with the mayor and police chief to come in and remove the trespassers. Look, we're okay with peaceful protest. And the mayor was, when we were arguing in my office, she kept saying they were peaceful. Well, they may be peaceful, but they're destroying property and they're trespassing and they're intimidating the civil rights of the Jewish students.
But it's not even just look, the anti-Semitic piece of this is a whole separate ball of wax. But the idea that a university's president is saying people are trespassing, they're encamping on private property, they're calling the mayor and the police and asking for help and being told, no, we don't want to help you.
That's exactly what was happening. That went on for 14 days. 14 days. And were it not for the House Oversight Committee hauling in the mayor and the police chief, then it would still be going on as we speak.
So is this it? Are you good, or do you still want to hear answers?
I'm good for the time being. You know, I hope this is an isolated case in Washington, D.C. There are other universities. You have American, you have Georgetown. There are other universities there. We're going to monitor the situation. If we get into another situation where the universities plead for help and help doesn't arrive, then we'll resume the hearing. It was technically postponed. It wasn't canceled. It was postponed because I don't have the confidence that this won't happen again. I hope it doesn't happen again. But look, I like Mayor Bowser. So we work closely together on a lot of things. Where we disagree is on crime. Washington, D.C. has a soft on crime policy, and it's having a detrimental impact on their bottom line, on tourism, on retail businesses, on people wanting to locate offices there, the commercial real estate market down. It's all because of the soft on crime policies. The prosecutors don't prosecute, and the police don't arrest people. And you've got this liberal city council, just like most of the blue cities, that want to be politically correct. And right now in the Democrat Party, as you know, there's a significant vocal percentage of the Democrat Party that's anti-Semitic.
Well, it's not just anti-Semitic. I mean, you brought up anti-crime. I was up on the Hill last week speaking to a group of staff, and one of the gentlemen that was escorting me out said he lived in Navy Yard. Yeah. And I said, oh, that's interesting. He goes, yeah, but I'm probably moving over to Virginia soon. He was saying, asking me where I lived, and said, there's only so many times that crimes can happen outside my building that I feel safe. I talked to another Hill staffer that's been carjacked in Navy Yard as well, not too far from the blocks of the Hill. When you talk to Mayor Bowser about crime, does she deny that there's a problem, or is it she's just soft on it?
Both. She denies that it's as bad as what I want to say, and she's soft on it. And I'll be honest, and I like Mayor Bowser, but I do think she tends to get offensive sometimes. That here's a white guy complaining about crime in a city that's overwhelmingly black, and the criminals are proportional to the population, and it has nothing to do with race. It's about law and order. And, it doesn't matter if the criminal's white, black, Hispanic, Muslim, Christian, it doesn't matter. If you don't punish criminals for breaking the law, they're going to continue to break the law. And that's why you have this lawlessness in the blue cities. The soft on crime prosecutors, along with the mayors who are trying to be politically correct, create an environment ripe for criminals.
It was funny. There was a story earlier this week. A candidate for D.C. City Council had his car stolen while he was fixing one of his signs. He jumped out of his car to fix a sign. And I just, the funny thing is, to your point, this isn't a racial thing. I mean, D.C. relies, to your point, heavily on tourism. If you don't feel safe, I've lived or worked around D.C. since the early 90s. I've never felt more unsafe than I do now when the sun goes down in D.C. And I lived there in the city during the Barry years, Mayor Barry, when it was, it was like the OK Corral.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question. We have staffers that don't feel safe. The parents call me and they're concerned about the safety. A lot of my staff lives out or in that Navy Yard area. That's a new area, revitalized area. As a result of that, that's where the criminals are going. When you ask the bank robbers, why do they rob the banks? Because they say that's where the money is. And you have the nice cars out there in the Navy Yard, and that's why they're all being carjacked. And I mean, a lot of times these people that carjack these cars, they're back on the streets before the end of the day. I mean, if you don't hold people accountable for wrongdoing, they're going to continue to commit crimes. And that's what we have in all the blue cities, but especially in Washington, D.C. So, it's nothing personal against Mayor Bowser. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to change their attitude towards crime, towards holding people accountable for breaking the law, or you're going to continue to have people moving out of the city. You're going to have businesses moving out of the city. They're going to have less tax revenue, and they're going to continue to be in a downward spiral unless they uphold the rule of law.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, just to be frank, it's also about like safety. I mean, we saw a former staffer from the Trump administration be killed. His kids now have no father. His wife has no husband. It's not just victimless crimes. I mean, they were stealing stuff, but then we're also harming people. Yep. And I'm glad you're at least going, providing that kind of oversight, enforcing it. But the thing that I found so interesting was that Wednesday morning when I get up and I'm watching this press conference, Mayor Bowser is acting as if somehow, and the police as well, they were acting like somehow they came up with this idea. They were like, early tonight we did this because we had warned them 6 times. They had assaulted a police officer. The reality is much different. If you hadn't called that hearing, they wouldn't have done what they did. And that's the shame of it, is that you force them to do the right thing to protect our nation's capital and its citizens.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. Because when we had our private meeting, we had a very lively debate over whether or not they were breaking the law. And the mayor kept bringing up the point, well, this is a peaceful protest. Well, it was peaceful, but they were trespassing. They were intimidating Jewish students. The whole business model for George Washington University was being turned upside down during finals week, with graduation rapidly approaching. I mean, the students and faculty at George Washington didn't deserve that. We pay taxes to provide a police force to protect us. That's a responsibility of the government, to protect its people. And the Washington, D.C. government was not doing that. And I don't believe they would have cleared that out were it not for the fact that we were going to bring them in front of a nationally televised committee hearing talking about why they weren't doing their job.
All right, folks, I want to interrupt this conversation with James Comer to tell you about an offer from my friends at Newgenics. Now, look, I'm tired, but I'm over 50. Can you imagine how tired someone like President Trump is? 4 criminal cases going on at once. James Comer having all these hearings. Well, this is where Newgenics comes in. If you are older, you are not feeling that same spring in your step, the same energy you had 10 years ago. I know that feeling. And I'm sure a lot of these guys do. Think about how many members of Congress are running around from hearing or courthouse to courthouse. If you check out the offer from my friends at Newgenics right now, you can get the Total T. Newgenics Total T. Text 231231, enter code word Spicer, and you get a bottle of it free. Complimentary. No strings attached. All the Democrats want to do is give you free stuff from the government. This is a free gift from Nugenics. 231-231 Spicer. Plus, you get an extra bottle of Thermo X. It's their fat incinerator. I mean, if you're sitting around, you need it. So you get the energy and you get to burn fat. What could be better than those two things for free? And the thing about Nugenics is it uses clinical grade products. None of this generic stuff. It's filled with a proprietary blend called Tesnor. This isn't like any other product on the market right now. It will add back in that energy that you've been missing. So go right now. Go to 231-231 on your phone. Put that in, enter code word Spicer. That's me. And you get two things for free. What a deal. You can't beat that on a Friday, can you? Remember that texting enrolls you into automatic recurring messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates, as always, they're going to apply. It's the #1 doctor recommended brand by primary care physicians based on an independent study conducted by IQVIA 2022. Now back to the conversation with James Comer. Well, and I think the unique thing about this is it just wasn't James Comer versus Muriel Bowser. You were basically saying the university president has asked for this, right? And so Mayor Bowser could disagree with you all she wanted, but it was the university president who's saying, I need help and I'm not getting it. And that's where Mayor Bowser had to realize she wasn't fighting you. She was actually fighting her own constituents. Yeah.
I was not expecting the president of George Washington University to be that candid, to be that open, to be that direct, because, you know, what we've seen from university presidents at these big elite schools has been a mixed bag, to say the least. But she was very clear when we sat down for that meeting that they needed help. And I promised the president of George Washington that we would do all we could, that help was on the way. And I told the university president, if the mayor doesn't do her job, we're going to holler in front of the Oversight Committee, and it's going to be a nationally televised committee hearing. And the American people aren't going to stand for this lawlessness. They're not going to stand for this type of intimidation of Jewish students. And they're sick and tired of Democrat leaders, including Joe Biden, whose whole Israel policy now revolves around pleasing some voters in the Detroit suburbs, to try to, appease them to somehow carry Michigan in one of the important swing state battles. We've got a Democrat Party that's being taken over by these anti-Semitic activists. And I think that's one reason that the mayor was slow. You know, she was under political pressure. But at the end of the day, she finally did the right thing. But it took 2 weeks, Sean. And those students are paying a lot of money for education. You know, they were traumatized. They shouldn't have to go through that. They shouldn't have to fear. Their families shouldn't have had to gone through that. But at the end of the day, the problem's been solved. Whether it's temporary or solved for good, that's yet to be determined.
So there's obviously a lot further that you can go. We've heard a lot of discussion about who's funding all of this. And we see in campus after campus, the same tents, the same organization. There's a video going around today showing people how to break through police barricades. They were literally having these instructional videos where they showed them how to break through. That training is being funded. Is there any thought about trying to get some of these organizations, whether it's Soros, the Rockefellers, the Gateses, to bring them in and ask them about the funding of these groups, or getting a little bit further oversight into where the money's coming from?
We're already on that, Sean. And, last week, Speaker Johnson announced that several committees were going to launch investigations into ways to solve this anti-Semitic outburst that we're seeing all across the United States. Our role in the Oversight Committee is going to be much like our role in the Biden investigation. We're going to follow the money. And we've got some leads on some groups that may be providing funding for this. We've been meeting with different anti-Semitic groups that are different groups that fight anti-Semitism, that think they know some of the groups that are funding these campus protests. We're going to try to subpoena the bank records, and we're going to follow the money and see who in fact is funding these types of demonstrations, and are they donating to certain politicians? And I think those are questions that the American people need answered, and we're going to do everything in our ability, and we're on it now, trying to follow the money trail.
You know, this, as I said at the outset, what this example showed me, and if you think about it in the context of the House Education Committee having that hearing, your colleague Virginia Fox, Elise Stefanik questioning the precedents of this. It really does show that highlighting some of this wrongdoing and shedding light on it, calling it out, really can have a huge positive impact on what the right thing. What has this taught you? What has this inspired you to maybe look more at?
Well, I think that one of the criticisms we have in the Oversight Committee, Sean, and you're very experienced in that, is that, the hearings get out of hand or whatever, but, people don't want to go in front of the Oversight Committee, especially if they're in the wrong, especially if they know public opinion's not on their side. And I think that we need to utilize that and threaten to bring people in if they don't become transparent. If we're trying to bring more of the Biden administration officials in front of the committee. We've issued more subpoenas. We're doing everything we can to bring them in front of the committee so the American people can hear them explain why they're not being transparent with their tax dollars, why they're creating their own rules and regulations and compliance that's inconsistent with what the law is and what the courts have ruled and things like that. So we're going to try to be more proactive in trying to bring these people in. When we have a hearing, when we schedule a hearing, you need to have an objective. Our objective with this hearing this week was to clear out the trespassers from the George Washington campus. That was accomplished. So we achieved our goal. And I think that's what we need to focus on is having more achievable goals in these hearings and utilize the firebrands and the high profile stature that we have on the committee to try to get things done for the American people.
I know it wasn't your committee, but the House Commerce Committee tried to have the CEO of NPR appear this week. At the last minute, she cited a scheduling conflict and didn't appear. Number one, I felt like that was a cop-out. How do you have a scheduling conflict like an hour before for a hearing that you've known about for a while? I feel like she had the same cold feet that Mayor Bowser had, but doesn't have the ability to send the police to go fix something. She knew she was going to be held accountable. So I get it. It's not your committee. But if in that situation, walk me through how that works out. Do you offer to reschedule it? Do you say, hey, we're going to hold you in contempt?
Well, I think they're going to have to offer to reschedule it. If she doesn't, then hold them in contempt. To be able to successfully hold them in contempt, you need to give every opportunity, just like a subpoena. For a subpoena to be upheld in court, you need to demonstrate every opportunity to work with the witness to show up. But at the end of the day, Sean, this goes back to an overall business model for holding people accountable that I think Republicans have not done a good job on. We have to hold them accountable with the power of the purse. And one thing that hurt my ability to hold people accountable, like NPR or other government agencies that have run amok, is the fact that we have an appropriation committee that at the end of the day went ahead and funded everything at the current levels. They didn't cut anybody. We needed to cut the Department of Justice. We needed to make cuts to the FBI. We certainly didn't need to provide funding for a new FBI building. There are agencies in this government that are not doing their jobs, just like the D.C. police force, and their budgets need to be cut. With these universities that are allowing this anti-Semitic behavior, they need to have their federal funding cut. If they're relying on a lot of foreign students that are getting foreign visas, we need to look at reducing the number of foreign visas. We need to hold these universities accountable. We need to hold these government agencies accountable, and we can do that with the power of the purse. But honestly, and I don't think it's any secret, the Republicans on the Appropriations Committee and our overall conference failed to do that last year. Of course, we had lots of obstacles with all the speaker drama and the motion to vacate and all that. But we're going to have to do better. And we sent a letter from the Oversight Committee to Tom Cole, the new Appropriations Chair, last week, citing all the different agencies that are refusing to turn over information to us. They're not cooperating with our lawful government oversight, and we expect consequences. We expect their budgets to be cut. When you start cutting their budgets, they'll start being transparent, and that's what we're going to have to do a better job of as a Republican majority.
I couldn't agree with you more, but let's just take this down. Some of my old military buddies used to say in the Army, Barney style, right? With NPR, I don't get, so here's my thing. Make this as simple as possible, right? I think that some of the bigger stuff is a little more amorphous. Like, should we cut this agency or not? And the Democrats will make an argument about, you know, this is going to hurt security or blah, blah, blah. With NPR and a couple of these, it's simple. Does NPR serve a federal purpose or not? The answer, whether or not you're a liberal or a conservative, is absolutely not. We should not be, from the federal government, funding a radio station, regardless of how left-wing it is. And just jam it. Make Democrats have to vote yes. In a world where everybody can stream anything that they want, where there's millions of choices on radio and television and news, it's a joke. But why we make it more complicated. I take your point, the power of the purse. But just jam Tom Cole and say, okay, we're not going to fund NPR, full stop. Here's my question to you. Do you think among your Republican colleagues, I think the number's 227 today. It changes every day.
221, I think.
Okay, 221. If you stood up at the Republican conference meeting this week and said, I want to defund NPR down to zero, is anybody against me? Would anyone stand up and say, Chairman, I'm not with you?
Oh, yeah, there would be a few. There would be. But I agree with you completely. I'm for, look, we've got to cut spending, and that's a great place to start. We've already seen evidence that NPR is biased. If we didn't need to see it before, we've seen it in the fact that they don't have a single conservative on their payroll. So, yeah, there's a radio station on every number on the radio. It's not when NPR was created, there may have been a desert for information news related. That's not the case anymore with satellite radio and everything else. So this isn't needed anymore. They've abused their privileges with all their liberal propaganda. So they need to be eliminated. I agree. But yeah, we would have Republicans that would oppose that. There's no question about that.
But I would argue that even if it was if you were airing Breitbart radio, I'd say there isn't a federal purpose. We don't need the federal government. But here's my broader point. We've got to start hitting singles. Everyone always says, well, that's not that much money. I get it. But we need to show the American people that we actually value their tax dollars, and we'll start at the lowest amount and then keep working up. But we make this too complicated sometimes and talk about a 2% cut on a budget. No one knows what that means. Cut NPR, start there, and then just go program by program and say, make the Democrats take the tough vote. Make Democrats walk the plank and say, I'm willing to say, I support this ridiculous program or this wasteful spending or this duplicative spending. But too often, we're our own worst enemies.
I agree, Sean. I'm for you for speaker if you want to come over here and be...
I've heard about that job. I don't want it. I've seen that movie. I don't like how it ends.
Right. Well, I agree with you completely. And that was one of the arguments I had with Chip Roy and Ralph Norman. Those guys, I agree with them ideologically. But it's the tactics. They were talking about the top line numbers and the top line. Nobody understood any of that. Pick and choose. Pick some things. The FBI headquarters, NPR. Eliminate the funding. And let the American taxpayer see the Republicans have your back. The Democrats want to spin us into oblivion. So I agree with you completely. I think that's great. And hopefully we can get more like-minded people in the House Republican majority.
Yeah, I just think, I always go back to 1994 when Newt Gingrich carried around this ice bucket. And I've told this story before, but he used to say, I don't know, it costs like $100,000 to deliver ice to every member's office. And he just said, I'm going to eliminate it. And now it's only $100,000, but it was a tangible example of how he was taking the American taxpayers' money seriously and wanted them to understand that Washington respected it, and we weren't going to just waste any dollar, never mind that it didn't add up to a lot. And I think it got through to a lot of people, because when you try to explain a 1% cut or a reduction in the cost of growth, it's like, wow, it goes over everyone's head. And those tangible examples of waste or duplicity, a program that started in 1900 to pay for, the teletype doesn't need to exist anymore. And so finding those examples, I get it. It's not going to add up to, $1 trillion. But there's a point at which we keep hearing about this waste in Washington, and Democrats get off the hook on it because they love it. We just don't bring it up for a vote.
Right. I agree. And I think that's a great idea. And I'm with you 100% on it.
All right. Let me just ask you this. you brought up Hunter Biden. Where are we at Hunter Biden first? And then I want to ask you about impeachment before we go.
Yeah. So we've got, just recently, we've gotten all the phone records in on an account that was being paid out of one of these LLCs. We've been tracing the phone numbers, and we found some interesting thing. We found some interesting people who were receiving the phones that was being paid for with the LLC. We also received through subpoena 3.7 million documents from Devon Archer. Now you can imagine how long it's taken to go through those 3.7 million documents, but we're finding very valuable stuff for the information, for the investigation. So we're trying to wrap this up, Sean. We're in the final stages of this. We've done the depositions. Some of the documents are proving that some of the things that some of the people that testified under oath were not being truthful. So lying to Congress, that's perjury. That's a felony to lie to Congress. It's perjury to lie under oath. So we're wrapping up the final stages of this, but it's very concerning. The Bidens have taken tens of millions of dollars from our enemies around the world. They can't say a single thing they did to earn the money. Joe Biden said he didn't know anything about it, and he never met with any of the people. We know that he was the central figure in the influence peddling scheme. He met with all the people, and according to three of the Biden associates, he was the central figure. He was the closer in the influence peddling schemes. I think it's the biggest political corruption scandal of my lifetime, and we're doing everything we can to hold this family accountable for criminal wrongdoing.
Well, I think it's the same philosophy that we started with. The more light you shed on it, the more people can see it, the better.
Right.
The last question I'll ask you, will we have a vote on impeaching Joe Biden before this Congress is over?
Well, it looks to me like he's committed impeachable offenses, plural. So I would love to see that vote. I don't know what the outcome of the vote was. We've got some Republicans that I just don't agree with ideologically on anything. And they would rather turn a blind eye and get along and just hunker down and go on with the status quo than try to make the tough decisions to hold people accountable. But there's no question in my mind Joe Biden's committed impeachable offenses, and we'll see how this thing all turns out. But I would love to have a vote, because I would love to vote that way to hold him accountable. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest potential for accountability will be with criminal referrals.
Last question. Would you rather have a vote if a couple of Republicans don't vote with you, so it comes up short, or just no vote and the evidence out?
We'll leave that to Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Scalise, but I would like for the American people to see who's in favor of accountability and who's okay with a presidential family receiving tens of millions of dollars, never paying a penny of taxes on it, lying about it, costing 5 different government agencies millions of dollars and years of investigations, only to be told to stand down because they're a privileged ruling class family that's above the law. If there are Republicans that are okay with that, then let them explain that to their constituents back home.
Okay. Congressman James Comer, thanks for holding everyone accountable. I love what you're doing on the Oversight Committee, and I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Sean.
You bet. Kimberly, great to see you. Congrats on the book.
Thank you so much. Great to be on your show.
Okay, so who came up with the title, The Princess and the Pup?
Actually, so I was with one of my best friends and we were talking about it. I said, well, it's a story about a princess and the pup. Well, why shouldn't that be the name? Exactly. It's a cute little princess, Kimberly. She's got blue eyes like me. And the pup is actually named Jack. And he's a real pup. Dawn and I have a rescue pup named Jack, like Captain Jack Sparrow, because he has a little black eye patch. So that's why also we wanted to make sure. And, that 10% of the proceeds go to our favorite charity, Furry Friends, to help with neglected and abused and abandoned animals. So it's really cute. And the princess adopts this little dog, and together they face their fears together. So it's something that I really wanted to do. It's been a passion project for me. I worked as animal abuse prosecutor, as one of the many hats I wore in the DA's office, and I'm on the board for this charity as well. So it's a nice way to give back and also to give something wholesome to children, because we've seen with all the indoctrination, and I love what Brave Books is doing and making sure that, kids have something that's good to read and inspirational.
Yeah, as a fellow Brave Book author, I can't speak highly enough of the work that they do. All right, I hate to interrupt Kimberly, but I want to tell you about my friends from Bishop Gold. You've heard about the gold craze that's going on. All over the country, people are trying to get gold. Costco, you name it. You see the commercials everywhere. There's a story that it's going gangbusters in China. Everybody gets it. It's where you want to put your money right now. Gold, silver, other precious metals. The question is, where do you go? Where did I go? I went to my friends at Bishop Gold Group. If you go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean, or you can give them a call at 844-984-1616, you get a free gift. But more importantly, you get their advice. And that's why I went to my friends at Bishop Gold Group. It's worth it. Just make the call. There's no obligation to buy. When I did, I sat down, I talked to them about what my financial future looked like, what my asset allocation looked for. I talked about different things that I have in my portfolio, and they helped come up with a combination of how precious metals could fit in with that. I invested my money with Bishop Gold Group. This is who I recommend. So all I'm asking you to do is go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean and just try it. See if it works for you. But I'm telling you, these are the experts in the field, and they can create what's perfect for you and your situation. Maybe you have an old IRA or a 401k that you want to roll over. Doesn't matter. Maybe you just want to expand your investments. Go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean. You get a free gift and some really good advice. Let me ask you a silly question, though. The book, this princess has, I don't know, I'll tell me if I'm wrong, a self-esteem issue. Was that personal or is that made up?
Well, she just was like lacking kind of confidence because she had fears and she wasn't like fully being able to come into her own. And it's really sweet because the dog is the same way, little Jack, and he's alone and scared and afraid of many different things. You know, in when he's outside of the kingdom and in the woods and stuff. And so, but because she's able to get him, then they come together to face their fears. So it's self-esteem, it's courage, it's all of those things. And I think like just growing up in general and working as a teacher, I saw that as a common theme with a lot of children. So I wanted to try to address that and speak to it and encourage them. I always have, you know, with our kids to say, face your fears. And it is always easier to do and be courageous when you have a friend by your side.
You know, you mentioned the work that you do with animals. Obviously, this is something that spans. It's sort of like the women in the Trump family seem to really are the folks that go out there and rescue animals and are really into this. But you had no. I mean, I'm sure when you wrote this book, you couldn't have fathomed that the week that you did this big issue would be going on with Kristi Noem and how she treated her pet. What do you think about how that situation has gone down and how she has responded to it?
Yeah, it's uncanny timing. Look, I was shocked to hear it. It was very disappointing. It breaks my heart. I feel for the dog. There's so many great rescue groups. It's never okay. It's unacceptable to shoot an animal, to abuse an animal. There's incredible groups. Like you said, Laura and I work with so many that do unbelievable work. So I just, you know, as a woman, as a mother, as an animal lover, and, you know, a mom of a number of rescue dogs that Donna and I have, it's just, it's heartbreaking to me. There's always a way. And a dog is like, hasn't fully developed, especially at, 14 months of age. It can take a few years for them to come into their own, to their personality. And you can work to properly socialize an animal. So I don't know why this happened. I don't understand that kind of response or mentality. So it's, to me, it's just inexcusable what transpired.
You mentioned your previous work as a district attorney. And I mean, this week, if you think about the 4 big cases that President Trump is facing, I mean, each one of them in one way or another has started to move in his direction. No shock. But I want to put you were assistant DA twice in San Francisco and in LA.
Yes.
I want to focus your attention, like first on Georgia. This idea that this relationship that Fani Willis had with Nathan Wade, I'm a non-lawyer. I can see it as a conflict of interest. Putting your hat back on as an assistant DA, is this something that people are blowing out of proportion, or is it definitely a no-go zone that a prosecutor can't have a relationship with that with somebody else who's prosecuting a case in the same genre?
Yeah, I mean, it's highly improper. It's unethical. It should have been disclosed. I think it, by its very nature, disqualifies her. It just really shows just the nefarious nature and unethical behavior that these people are engaging in. Their, lawfare against President Trump. And I'm really happy that the court is taking this up. I'm fairly confident, optimistic that she's going to be held accountable. This is not something that should be allowed. And I think it just, really screams of the, unfairness and what they're doing and trying to essentially make, the election in all these different courtrooms, instead of facing President Trump, at the ballot box on election day, they are weaponizing and using this lawfare to try to sideline him. So whether it's Georgia or whether it's, the New York case that he's right now involved in, it's just unacceptable. It's un-American, it's unconstitutional, and they're infringing on his First Amendment rights as well. But I am confident that, justice delayed will not be justice denied. And as these work their way, these cases work their way through the legal system, that President Trump is going to prevail. And I mean, and Sean, you worked with him. The man is very resilient. He's unbelievably tough. He's been very stoic in how he has handled everything. And it's actually only inured to his benefit in terms of the polling and the numbers. It's not just like Rasmussen showing him way up, but, CNN has polls showing him up as well. And a number of states that ordinarily wouldn't be in play, haven't been in play in the past, are in play now. And I think we just see that the American people are good people, and they really do not like this unfairness and what they're trying to do against President Trump, these Biden trials. It's just a full frontal assault on American democracy and on the Constitution. This New York one in particular is just a show trial in the truest sense of the term. It's a 6-week show trial in the media, capital of the world, right? Where the only realistic consequence of a conviction is a talking point for the Biden campaign. And it really is just a disgrace on American democracy and should never have been brought forth to begin with.
I get asked this a lot, but you're the perfect person to ask this, right? So there's this guy, Michael Colangelo. He was in the Biden White DOJ from day one. He leaves the Biden DOJ. He had been the principal deputy associate attorney general. I assume that's fairly high up. So he's got this big job in the DA's office. Suddenly, he leaves and goes to the Manhattan DA's office to take over the prosecution of Donald Trump, right? The people that I talk to ask me all the time, this doesn't sound normal. A guy who's the real high up in the Department of Justice suddenly goes to the Manhattan DA's office to prosecute a case that's been passed over by the same DOJ that he's leaving. Yes. The Federal Election Commission passes on it. The Southern District of New York's been passed on it. The previous DA passed on it. What does that tell you as someone who was a former assistant DA? Is that really that weird?
It's absolutely outrageous. It shocks the conscience, in fact. I mean, and that's why we're calling these, the Biden trial, because it really is part of a grand partisan legal witch hunt, orchestrated by and on behalf of, the failed president, crooked Joe Biden, and his losing campaign. And that's what they're doing against President Trump every single day. And they're taking someone that was part of the swamp, a paid consultant as well, and putting him here in this case. I mean, people are not stupid. The American people are smart, and they're seeing through this because we're shining light on it, because shows like yours and like mine and Don Jr.'s are actually exposing this corruption, talking about the facts, and showing the American people that this is nothing more and tantamount to gross election interference. They're out to destroy the president, the family, lives and livelihoods. And they are wasting time and resources and attention that should be on actual proper, functions in terms of looking at cases that need to be prosecuted, worrying about public safety and crime that's rampant in a place like New York. And instead, they're putting all the resources and attention on cases like this. And it's a sham, and it's a shame.
I want to ask you, first of all, just to shift to political things for 2 seconds. I know that there's obviously a ton of speculation as to who Donald Trump might choose as VP. Do you have a favorite?
It's interesting. Yes. My favorite is who President Trump picks.
Smart move. Very smart call. Good answer.
Good answer. I'll tell you the people I like.
Okay.
For real. And I haven't picked a favorite yet, to be honest with you. And I'm so curious, like the rest of the world is, to see who the president is going to choose. But we've got great people in contention. We have Burgum. He likes him a lot. He's fantastic. I love Secretary Carson. There's Senator Marco Rubio. How about, Governor Sanders? She's fantastic. Who else? We've got a bunch of people that I think are pretty good. Oh, Tim Scott, he's great. J.D. Vance, fantastic. So I think we have a really good bench. And when you look at the juxtaposition of the Democrats, it's
right.
It's bad. It's just Kamala Harris, please, God, we don't need 4 more years of her.
Our VP bench is better than their replace Biden bench. All right,
who do you like? Can I turn the tables on you, Sean? Go ahead.
I like a lot of your list. I do like Tim Scott. I think he brings a lot to the table. I think Sarah Sanders would be great as well. I think that, to your point, I think that people that are going to be comfortable and provide Donald Trump with the support that he needs and not try to outshine him. And that's why, to your response, this has got to be a gut thing for him. He's got to say, I trust this person. They're not going to try to stab my back or jump over me to angle themselves for 2028. And whoever he has that feeling with, there's not a bad name on the list. There's no one I look at and say, I don't want that person. So I don't... all of the names that are mentioned, I think, are great. I think Marco Rubio would be fantastic. So the list, JD, all of them that you mentioned are great people. There's not a bad one on there. And that's the beauty of it, is it can go 15 deep. Secretary Carson, same thing. Fantastic man.
Very loyal.
So very loyal. Last question I have for you. I asked Laura this question. Donald Trump wins, which I think we're all in agreement he will. Is there any desire to serve in a second Trump administration?
You know what? I always do what the president, decides. I think he has great instincts and great judgment. I personally don't have a burning desire to go serve in the administration. I love to serve the American people and do what I can to be supportive and get out there like I'm doing now as a surrogate for the president and helping with, fundraising and helping to support the candidates that he has selected and backed and chooses so that he has the right resources, that when he's reelected, he's got fighters, not like fake rhinos, in Congress, real fighters in the House and strong advocates in the United States Senate. We've got some great candidates out there, and I really, really want to make sure that we get the right people in. So that way we have the Oval. We've got a strong, congressional office. We've got a great United States Senate, so we can get some serious legislation put forward, more great judicial picks, and make sure that we really strengthen our national security and our border. So I want him to have great people in his administration as well, and just kind of hit it out of the ballpark from day one. We don't want to make, any mistakes or have any bad judgments, because you know how that can be. So we have to have someone very serious as Attorney General as well, and revamping for DOJ and the FBI and CIA. All of the above. There's a lot of work to be done, but we have some fantastic people in mind.
All right. Where can we get the book?
All right. You can go to kgpup.com. Okay, to get the book. And I also have, and you'll see on there, it's very cute. It's a little Biden chew toy for dogs to play with, and they can just eat him up. And we did an examination to see if there was a brain in there, but there was just a squeaky toy when you squeeze on his head.
Kimberly Guilfoyle, congrats on the book. Thanks for being with us. Remember,
thank you,
folks, continue to subscribe to the show. Get us on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, and Apple. We got a great show ahead for you all next week. Some great guests coming your way. So hit that notification button. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.